closest human experience to that I think it would just have to be if maybe I were alone in the woods with silence, nobody around, and a creature of the night coming up out of nowhere to attack. And I remember thinking, is this what death is like? Because I really felt like this being was trying to steal me.
I'd like to know how many of you have ever woken up unable to move or cry out, can't move a bit, can't say anything. Or sometimes it might happen just as you're about to fall asleep, but you're awake and you can't move. I've written about sleep paralysis in different cultural settings as being about traditions of supernatural assault. What do I mean by that? Well, supernatural simply means to most people in ordinary English something non-material but real, spiritual, for example. So demons, ghosts, etc. would be supernatural.
And I remember waking up and being like, don't move. Whatever you do, don't move.
And it's like it wants to possess you. And it's a really scary feeling because it covers you. It just...
Now, why is it that some people think that this can kill? Well, first of all, it feels like you're going to die.
I thought I was dying. I thought I was going to go. I was in some limbo somewhere, and that's the state I was going to be in.
I felt that I was dying. Not only was I paralyzed, couldn't talk, but I couldn't breathe, and I felt like I was leaving my body.
The idea in Cambodian culture is if you awake from this and you have your heart is pounding, you're dizzy, you have these symptoms. The idea is that this has frightened you so much that your soul may be displaced from the body, which can cause you to die.
Hey, come on.
Sorry,
come
I'm
on.
sorry.
It's okay.
This terrified me really bad to where I wouldn't even go to bed at night. I'd stay up all night long just so that I wouldn't have to go to sleep, so I wouldn't have to experience that again.
can't shout, you can't move. You feel yourself wanting to actually scream and want the sound to come out, but it doesn't come out. Horrible feeling, really horrible, really, really scared.
How she kind of slowly walks through my door. Her back is hunched over. She
colleague of mine, a psychiatrist, also interested in sleep paralysis, did a survey of professional psychiatrists, giving them a description of a perfectly typical sleep paralysis episode with the frightening presence, etc., and asked people what they made of it. Over half of them diagnosed it as a psychotic episode. Most of them thought the person was schizophrenic. That's appalling.
So what do you think about a culture where it's okay to talk about that and nobody thinks you're weird?
I think it'd be really neat, because I know in our culture, yeah, I mean, the first thing anyone would say is you're crazy, seek help. That's definitely the first reaction I would have, and that's the first reaction I think that most people would have.
And I didn't want to talk about it to anybody because it sounds silly. Nobody wants to believe that there's something else out there other than what they can prove or see.
Physicians don't ask about sleep paralysis. They don't know what it is. Even if they said they had it, most patients told a physician they wouldn't know what it was.
Because it's not acceptable in our culture to, because a lot of people think you're wacky or something if you say this. So I always describe it as being part of some kind of a sleep nightmare kind of thing.
I always ask people if they have ever told anyone else, and if so, who, and then to tell me something about what happened. And one woman in a survey I did up in central Pennsylvania said that the only person she told was her priest. And when she told her priest, his response was, "Oh, I'm so glad that's happened to someone else." Because it had happened to him and he didn't know anything about it. And her asking him for help was helping him because he found out that he wasn't the only one, which is ironic because 300 years ago, any priest on earth would have known what it was and would have known what to tell people to do.
But patients will frequently go to physicians, talk about this sort of thing, and they'll be thought to be psychotic. They'll think they're crazy. He's seeing, like my one patient said, they saw this creature floating towards them, and the physician might say, "Were you awake when this happened?" They probably would say, "Oh, I was awake and I saw it." And they might be treated with a medication for being psychotic.
People don't really talk about it. I've never really talked about it. I have never sat down with somebody and been like, "Let me tell you what this feels like." Because nobody understands.
So you add craziness to primitive, uneducated, naive, credulous. You've got all the stigma that you need to make people not want to admit to these experiences unless they're in a cultural frame that somehow makes it permissible.
When someone comes into my office, if they say, "I have met a demon in my room, he jumped on my chest and he pounded on my chest," it is not my job to talk them out of that.
It's a situation where it's nothing that they've done wrong. It's nothing that it seems like that they're not imposing this on themselves, and they're not telling themselves, "Tonight when I go to bed, this is going to happen."
Usually in the morning when you wake up, it's kind of like slow and groggy. You know, you kind of wake up and you want to close your eyes again and roll around or whatever. This was like, I went from like dead sleep to like instantly aware and wide awake, just like that, like in an instant. And the next thing I know, I'm just wide awake and there's this sound like resonating in my ears.
Seeing things that people ought not to be able to see, hearing things that they shouldn't hear. We say things, "You're hearing things." Well, everybody's hearing things, you know. But by hearing things, we mean, and you're hearing things that aren't there, and you're seeing things too. And that is sort of the cardinal feature of being crazy.
And I've never even really spoken about this until I was talking to my friend about it and her husband. And yeah, I probably sound like a total idiot.
But when they medicate them, they no longer see that. But when they go off their medication, what do? They start seeing what they've seen before. So if people could openly talk about it, instead of keeping it in themselves, because if you keep something like this into yourself, and you don't tell anybody, eventually it's going to weigh you down.
One of the most fascinating social issues here is that all of these kinds of experience were well known in Western tradition up to 300 or 400 years ago. It's not simply that Western culture never had a clue about these things. It's even more dramatic. We erased it. We erased knowledge of these experiences from the cultural repertoire while the experiences were continuing to happen. That is dramatic. That's a level of social control that's very impressive.
From what I think it is, from years in sleep, and sleep paralysis is just a quick phase change, like some people would say, some awake to asleep. That will be like if you ever been feeling yourself fall asleep and all of a sudden you feel your legs twitch. Almost everyone's felt that, or usually you're falling asleep. Usually you're skipping a stage, getting deeper into another stage, and I think it just is like a delayed switch, like the REM button turned on, but you weren't in REM sleep yet.
That Khmois got ghosts, some ghost shadow like this, like that. One not real, and one real. Not real because the problem with our physical. Not real, not from outside, but in our body, our element. Not ghost, not spirit. It's for physical, our physical. And another part is from spirit, from consciousness, from the spirit of the people pass away, or angel, from heaven, from that the people that pass away look around for a place for born.
Almost every patient that comes to see me for the first time who has PTSD, has trauma-related disorder, has it several times a month.
And this is really where I get excited in terms of treatment and in terms of helping people understand physiologically what's going on. So whether you're facing a Mack truck coming at you at full speed in your vehicle, or you're facing down a real or perceived demon, you're having a physiological response: fight, flight, or freeze.
Well, the Sleep Society has said 1 in 5 people have a sleep disorder, usually sleep apnea, and that could correlate with the paralysis, or the people saying they have things sitting on their chest at night or coming in and strangling them during the night. So be curious. I'd like to see a test. If you got one of these people that say, I'm having people come in and choke me every night, have a sleep study done and see if they have sleep apnea.
That one theory of it is that if you have this elaborate frame on it, once you have it once, it keeps happening. Because if you have it and you think it has this great meaning about your spiritual state, and it causes you to have flashbacks and gets you so anxious, that gets you more anxious. And when you get more anxious, you're going to have more sleep paralysis.
It's an attack, and if someday, and what I'm trying to do by staying close to the data, I'm not trying to insist, well, therefore it's gotta be supernatural. I'm just saying, well, if you don't like the supernatural explanation, tell me the other explanation. There are a bunch of things that people do not ever describe, but here is the range of the most common descriptions. First of all, humanoid, usually. Not always, but looking generally like a human figure, usually dark. A lot of people have told me that they started calling it the shadow man to themselves. It's not always male, but it frequently is male. Shadow man is a common sort of spontaneous label that people put on it. It's usually sort of normal human size. Sometimes it's smaller, and sometimes it's quite large, 7 feet or taller, but never gigantic. Sometimes it is more like a cloud or a mass of some sort, like a cloud or vapor coming toward you and then surrounding you. A number of people describe that. That's less common than the humanoid form. And fairly often people describe a presence that they can't see, but that they are aware of, both where it is, where it's moving, what it wants, that sort of thing, what it intends to do, that it intends to hurt them, or some people often say they're sure that it wants to kill them.
Well, I remember I was laying in bed. It must have been fairly late because the house was quiet. I remember laying on my back, like sort of, and the bed was positioned so that I could look down the hallway into the kitchen. But I was laying there, and I may have been half asleep, on the edge of going to sleep. I don't remember exactly, but I do remember hearing these sounds in the hallway. And it's sort of like it went from quiet to all of a sudden I'm hearing these different noises or voices or of these. I get the sense that they were small creatures or whatever it was, small spirits, from the high pitch and the just all of them like or whatever it was, making this noise, coming, grumbling, whatever it is, coming down the hallway. And instantly, within a few seconds of hearing that, I felt something sit on my bed. I felt a heavy weight, like a person had come into my room and sit on the end of my bed over to my left. And so I instinctively just took my leg and went under the covers and pushed, like I was trying to push whatever was there off the bed or out of the way. And as soon as I did that, I just felt something like something had pounced on me. And I was like paralyzed to the bed. I couldn't move. I'm laying there on my back, and I just felt this heavy weight, like something was holding me down, keeping me from moving. And I was panicked, and obviously. And I don't know how long it lasted. It seemed like 15 or 20 seconds, and then it just ended as abruptly as it had started.
I'm asleep, but I can feel it coming into my room. It's, you feel this real thick feeling. I don't know how to explain that. It's like, but you feel it. It's almost like there's no fog, but let's pretend that there's like a fog, a real deep fog that comes, and the minute it enters into the room, I know it's there. And I'm like, oh no, I've got to wake up, and I'm awake inside, but I'm not, my eyes aren't open.
The presence that I felt, it's a negative, always negative. Never has it ever been a positive.
When somebody says, describes it as a dead person at times, and in Spanish is, some people call it se subió el muerto, meaning that the dead thing came on me.
Not able to speak. It felt like your lips were sewn shut and your body was totally numb. Then I felt he was coming.
I know it's there, and I'm like, oh no, I've got to wake up, and I'm awake inside, but I'm not, my eyes aren't open, and I know everything that I've said, I know everything that I've felt, and my hand's kind of like paralyzed. I can't move the minute it walks into that room, and I know it's coming, and I've got only a certain amount of time to get my fingers into the sign of the cross, and I finally do, and it kind of like stops some of the strength that it's come in with, but not totally, because it starts at my feet and it crawls up me, and it's not in a loving way, although it might be to whatever it is, but it like holds me, and it just kind of like, and I have to get away from it, whatever it is, and I can't, and I'm praying, and I'm saying, you cannot take me, I am not yours, I belong to Christ. Oh my God, and God, I love you, and I'm asking God to please open up my eyes to get me away from it. And it doesn't leave me, but I keep praying and praying and praying and praying and praying. Finally, because it can't get in me, it wants to get in me. And I feel that. It's almost like if I were to lay there and say, go ahead, it would invade my body.
I'm pretty sure he's male because he has tried and has like had sexual contact with me. He'll like hold me down on the bed and my arms will be pinned back like this. And I don't know why, but I do sleep in weird positions, but my legs would be open and my arms would be up, and all of a sudden I feel this weight on me, and then someone trying to be in between to
scream or have voice in me, and I couldn't do anything. I was completely paralyzed.
And sometimes I was scared to even go to sleep because I would wonder, is this the night it's going to happen to me? I don't know if I can deal with this again. And it was, every time it was a battle of like good and evil.
Calling it evil, I don't know. Is it evil? Is it unhealthy? We just know that some situations are happening out there that probably not, we can't always define with a formula or with have a definition that this is happening because things happen on a day-to-day. I think we all have experienced certain things in our life that we have no answers for.
Her back is hunched over. She walks slowly, and then the next minute she's right there in my face. She has like blackish long hair. Sometimes she'll touch my face and sends, cold chills. She's scary. She wears like this black long dress. She just looks very evil.
A very typical scenario would be a patient would say that upon lying down to sleep, before actually sleeping, they would enter this state where they would suddenly be unable, they would be awake, but unable to move, unable to speak, and see a black shape come upon them.
I was about 12 or 13. My parents had just built a new home, or had a new home built in Lewiston. And I don't know if it was a year or two after we had moved in, but it was a brand new home still. And I had gone to bed at 8 o'clock, like I was told to do. And I closed my eyes just for a few minutes, not even a few minutes, like a second or two. Then I felt like I had opened my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, there was these 3 solid black shadows. I'm talking solid. I mean, you could see the outline of them, but you couldn't see through them. And it kind of like, I said, wow, what is this? And I closed my eyes again, and before I even opened my eyes, I had a massive nosebleed. And so I got up to tell my parents about it, and they thought that I was dreaming and that I hit myself. Well, I had just gone to bed, so I wasn't really gone to sleep. It was just that I had closed my eyes, and I felt like I had opened them again, and there were the shadows.
Sleep paralysis is the experience of awakening, unable to move. Or sometimes it happens just as you're about to fall asleep, suddenly finding yourself unable to move but not yet asleep. And it's produced by a physiological mechanism in the brain that's well understood. What is not understood is why at least somewhere around 80% of people in sleep paralysis have this very complex, strange, subjective experience that we've been discussing.
All of a sudden I felt this real, like something was just over the top of me, like just floating above me. And then I felt this pressure on top of me, just started to push me into the bed. And at this time, like again, I just couldn't work out whether I was dreaming or whether it was real. It wasn't until I was actually being really pushed into the bed I could feel loads of pressure on top of me. At this time I started to get really scared because I being pushed into the bed and I couldn't move. I felt my whole body just couldn't move. I couldn't scream, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't shout. I was trying to actually shout and scream and I couldn't do anything. I was paralysed, just being pushed into the bed, pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And then it just stopped.
Well, I remember waking up but not being able to move, completely paralyzed, being terrified, feeling that there was a presence in the room with me. There was like this crushing weight on my body, preventing me from moving even an eyelash. My heart was pounding. I remember sweating. I was trying to will myself in my mind to move any little part of my body, and nothing would move. And this went on for, I don't know, it felt like forever, but it was probably 10 or 15 minutes of just terror.
So Pol Pot, through the period of his rule, 1975 to 1979, approximately a quarter of the population was killed. Well over a million people died during that time period. Often patients have flashbacks of Pol Pot events, so that's how part of it feeds into the trauma story. So they go to sleep. They might have, of course, nightmares with flashbacks, but then they have the sleep paralysis, and they wake up in such a state of fear that then they usually see the shape coming upon them. So it's this sense of being pursued by this demonic force. And then they'll often have flashbacks of horrible Pol Pot events. So their father getting killed, seeing somebody eviscerated, where their chest, often they would take an axe and hit the back and take out the gallbladder of their victim. This was something that the Khmer Rouge did, and they would then take that and put it in a glass and drink it with alcohol as a way of taking the life force of the victims.
What it happened to me was I cannot move. Okay, even though I tried to move, I tried to talk, I couldn't talk. And I don't know why, but I just but after I tried to do it like for a few minutes, and then I can move my body, can move my arm. And then when I start to get up and I try to wake up my father, okay, say help me because the ghost is come to hurt me again.
ពេលយើងប្រាស់ខ្លួនទៅដេកទៅវិញហ្នឹងពេលនោះដែលមានខ្មោចមកសង្កត់យើងឬក៏ថាជាអ្វីមួយមកធប់ពីលើយើងហ្មងបាទ
He said when he go to sleep, he had a lot of bad dream and then become nightmare and flashback and eventually on and on over again and again, back and forth. And then he became had a bad dream about the ghosts that come to haunt him. He talked about that there are two men will die. One died outside the house. Okay, another one died inside the house. Also, there are women died inside the house. And because he feels so weak, and that's why sometimes we see the black shadow come with a black cloth, come to cover him and make him scared.
So I began my fieldwork in Newfoundland, Canada, which is an isolated, remote place that I thought would be a good place to find antique beliefs, old-fashioned beliefs. It was a good place for that. And I started looking for beliefs there that I thought might, well, that claimed to have an experiential basis, and that would then allow me to evaluate, well, how well does this tradition reflect observations that one could actually pursue on a research basis. And that was where I initially ran into sleep paralysis. That's not quite true. I ran into sleep paralysis 6 years earlier when it happened to me. And I didn't tell anybody about it. Then in Newfoundland, I ran into a tradition about sleep paralysis. This is what Newfoundlanders called the old hag. They believed it was caused either by witchcraft or by ghosts. And I didn't know it was sleep paralysis at the beginning there either. It took me about a year of working back and forth between the tradition and the scientific literature to identify it as what sleep researchers call sleep paralysis. And the description of sleep paralysis in the literature at that time was very narrow, I would say impoverished. It didn't include any of the interesting details that I came to realize are actually inherent in it, no matter where you find it. So that was Newfoundland. I was beginning to see, yes, there are beliefs that are based on experience that have been dismissed as superstitious beliefs that bear much more investigation.
So if you were brought up believing that these demons exist, if you're brought up in Haiti and you believe in voodoo, then being cursed is real as real can be. Now that's an anthropological perspective that's hard for some people to accept, but I accept that.
So I think that there's this aspect of consciousness as you go in and out of sleep, so that you then will see this shape moving towards you, and that you will be unable to move. What's fascinating to me is the pathoplastic nature of it. That's just a fancy way of saying in different cultures this black shape then can be seen as different things. So for instance, some of my Cambodian patients will see it as different demons that they're afraid about. So for instance, there's one demon that's known to just the person as they sleep, the body is left behind, and the head with the intestines attached will float through space will float along, and it will, in theory, go and feed on things below a house, detritus, blood. Some animal has died. It feeds on very foul matter. And I've had a couple patients who haven't seen just a black shape coming towards them, but have vividly seen one of these beings.
I don't put you on the spot, right? Because you have to think in another. I gotta translate my English back into Sean. Right? Yeah. But usually they say, Muroya. Muroya is just like a witch, and that's the normal word that people usually use. Now, what does this Muroya do? How does it appear, in the legend? They believe that if they see somebody they believe that is a witch, they think that that person has communication with ancestors, that they use those spirits to kind of maybe interfere with other people's lives or bring bad into people's lives, kind of mysterious ways of making it difficult for people. So I know this story, but I never experienced anything like that, so that's all I know.
Right from the beginning, I was convinced that ordinary people are smarter, are more sensible than they're given credit for by scholars, and that traditions that are widespread and deeply held probably have more rational basis and more observation built into them than the theories that I was taught in graduate school. Not by any means all. Certainly there are lots of traditions that have serious logical and other errors in them, but I couldn't believe that all of the beliefs of ordinary people that are not part of the academic worldview were therefore nonsense.
So if we get into this and we talk about, okay, somebody is having an experience in the middle of the night where they are half awake, half asleep. It's a common description. I'm awake, but I can't move. And in fact, while I'm awake and can't move, I am seeing or feeling an evil presence. And that's been described cross-culturally, which then would indicate to me there's an archetypal piece to it. Now, archetypal work would talk about essentially an intrapsychic perspective. So this is what's going on in my mind. That's different than a paranormal perspective, which is this is something that's actually happening. So there's a distinction I think that's worth talking about there. From a psychology perspective, one would certainly be able to understand from an archetypal, cross-cultural paradigm that there are common feelings of dread, common sense of demonic possession, a common understanding throughout the literature that there is something that is no fun, something that's really scary that's happening to me. So that's going on. I think that's a given. We have to accept this is a given. Now the question, would be, is it archetypal, meaning is it coming up from within, or is this really happening to somebody? Is somebody actually experiencing a spirit or a witch or a demon jumping on their chest, as the literature describes?
Simple thing. You don't have to be afraid. That's all it is when we get ready, when we're in a deep sleep, we get ready to travel, we do this subconsciously because we're asleep. We're not aware of it. We actually, our energy, our soul, our aura, whatever you want to call it, but the energy that cannot be destroyed, so I'm going to call it a soul, can actually go to the other side. And people think the other side is like way up there. You know, actually it's right there. There's no, because we're human, we want to put a space there. We want to put some kind of like, oh, it's 2 feet over or 3 feet above the ground. It's just there. We're in the middle of this spiritual world, so it's all around us. So subconsciously, we go travel. We do our thing. We can visit friends on the other side, loved ones that have gone on. We go and learn. They say there are buildings there, because if it's a perfect world and you want to keep learning, you can learn. Your mind is forever. And we have forever. You can't destroy energy.
I guess I don't know how to explain that in words. Saying that I'm having an out-of-body experience and going into these different realms or different dimensions, and that this entity is trying to pull me back before anything disrupts that, and trying to protect me while I'm going through my conscious, my subconscious, and whatever else is after that, because there is an aftermath. There is an after of that. I truly believe that. And whether they're trying to protect me and that's why they've made contact or whatever, no way. It's too evil. It's too scary.
Basically, it is that if sleep paralysis goes on for more than a little while, usually the episodes are fairly brief, seconds or minutes. But when an experience goes on 10, 15 minutes or longer, which they sometimes do, it becomes more and more common for them to turn into out-of-body experiences. And I know people who actually use sleep paralysis intentionally and cultivate sleep paralysis in order to use it as a path to out-of-body experiences, which is, to me, very interesting culturally, because it's something also that I had encountered in some shamanic traditions in other cultures.
Well, I personally am very much interested in the out-of-body experience, so I would really like to see you investigate further that and get maybe the connection to the paralysis that people have, but to just definitely go into the out-of-body, because I think that is the connection to the communication, new ways of communicating with one another and with other entities on the planet that would be really exciting.
I wasn't scared. I can remember thinking, hey, this is pretty cool, floating around. And then I kind of realized what was happening. And I kind of still felt a connection to my body. And at one point just kind of being brought back.
When we're done with our traveling, whatever it is, when we come back into our bodies, sometimes it's such a force, because we have to stop. This is the hard part, because we're humans. We don't understand this. We really don't. We just know we come back into our bodies. Somehow the energy goes, whoo. Well, what happens is people sometimes will wake up. We'll wake up as we're coming back into our shell, okay? That's the pressure you feel. That's the fear you feel, because it's such a volume of force coming back in. Lots of some with these so-called night terrors go, you know, and they wake up and they feel like, oh my God, I feel like I was choking, or I felt this heaviness on me.
Have you ever woken up at night and been unable to move?
Yes.
Anything else happen in addition to that?
Well, I'm not really sure how to explain it. I just, like, during the night, I just was sleeping and I, like, floated up to the ceiling. It was really weird. I floated up to the ceiling and I could see my daughter and my daughter's father and myself, and I was just, like, floating up to the ceiling, and then I thought I was dying, but I didn't really know.
And there's Johannes Kepler who was saying, I'm awake when you are asleep. This means, with other words, when the ego, the true human being, is asleep, that's when finally the true being, the unconsciousness, is able to become free. That's why we feel the flying. We want to become free, but it makes us consciously aware.
When sleep paralysis happens for a certain period of time, 15, 20 minutes, then astral travel, astral projection, the act of actually leaving the physical body is a means of escape, because then they're safe. They're not in that physical body that's experiencing that physical fear.
I would say if I was going to another dimension, I'm not coming back. And that's really scary. That's kind of like what I'm trying to get away from, is going into these other dimensions, because you're not going to get away from it.
To think about things that are so much bigger, that impact maybe beyond this planet, multiple galaxies, other, it's just to be able to have any connection to that bigger cosmos is, to me, so exciting. So I guess when I'm thinking about it, this little thing that has happened to me these few times that I've had out-of-body experiences, it just gives me hope that in fact there is so much more there. And so I guess it has had an impact on my life.
I believe that there are many different dimensions. I believe that there are portals in time.
Einstein used the term spooky force, or spooky action at a distance, to describe what he didn't like about Newton's theory of gravity and some of the aspects of quantum theory. Scientists often talk about spooky forces and how you want to make sure you don't start putting spooky forces into your theories. And that's a central characteristic of the modern attitude. And these experiences look like they include exactly what you would call a spooky force, a non-physical reality.
Who's to say? But certainly the door is opening in a very standard way. This being, it always chooses when you go to sleep or when you wake up, and it seems to approach you in a very stereotypical manner. It always seems to pop up and come at you from the head of your bed. It never comes from another direction. It's sort of like between the two bedposts there. It's its landing pattern. It's conceivable. It seems extremely unlikely to me, because why wouldn't you see in other? And for me, what's interesting is my patients don't just see it as a black form, but give it it's like a Rorschach, and they give it all these other spiritual beings. They see this as other sorts of various types of beings, and it gets better. When like I mentioned before, these beings must be very afraid of Paxil, or they must prey on only the anxious. My case is pragmatic. It's just that I have people that come to me in great distress, hate these experiences, find them terrifying, and I've just come out a pragmatic way of trying to help them.
Because it was like I laid down, and for some reason I was like, open your eyes. So I opened my eyes, and I would say that these dark black things, whatever they were, three side by side, was no more than like maybe 2 feet from my face, if even that. Because you figure I'm laying on the bed, and I'm laying. Usually I lay on pretty close to not the edge of the bed, but within reason, close to the edge, and there they are. So, and as fast as they were there, as fast as they were gone. You know what I'm saying? It's like holy crap. It's there they are. You close your eyes and they're gone. So I don't know, and you couldn't see through these guys, whatever they were. You couldn't see through them, because they were actually blocking my vision from actually even seeing any part of the room.
The idea of a different dimension, domain, whatever, would suggest that it is a different place in the same place, sort of, as opposed to these being things that are, for example, you mentioned the narrow range of the visible spectra. Well, if there were something in your environment that had a color that was outside of our visual range and it stood in front of you, it wouldn't be invisible. It would just look black. You know, it would block out the light from behind and it would reflect light that you couldn't see, so it would just look dark. So
like a shadow, in fact.
It would look like a shadow.
It's very interesting.
That's a good point, isn't it? Yeah, well, maybe there's something to that.
Science says if it's not in accordance with our laws, it doesn't exist. Oh, but by the way, 95% of the material that's out there, we know nothing about except that it's there, right? So science in its own mind has limits. We're looking into possibly establishing that it's okay to believe in other dimensions, and now we're getting, you and your spirit guides' response to that.
Well, they're saying science. Where does science come from?
It comes from
Man.
the human measurement, the human experience,
Yes.
right?
They're saying man,
Well,
therefore,
okay, yeah.
they're saying therefore, limited. It's coming from man, therefore it's going to be limited, they're saying. There's a whole nother world, like we like to say, they're saying, out there. It will never be understood by man. It's not meant to be. That is for another, they're saying time, another dimension. It's when we pass through this life and we get to the other side, we might now know something else entirely, totally foreign to what we were used to hear.
And I don't remember there ever being some kind of portal other than I know I didn't come out of my knees or my stomach. I know it was always through my head. And I know the struggle was always through there. And I feel like that's where our soul leaves and enters. I feel like everything happens through there because that's where I felt it happening. Other than that, I don't think I really visited another dimension. I think I experienced my soul out of my physical body in our dimension. Maybe I wasn't ready enough to go beyond that because it was so frightening.
When I'm at my house alone, I'm really sometimes terrified because I'm afraid I'm going to see those things again, but I haven't. But it's still in the back of my mind that I might experience it again.
So if I fall into a real deep sleep, it will get me. But as long as I stay awake inside of me, and I'm praying, and I've got what I can do with the sign of the cross, it cannot penetrate me.
It's not surprising that a person who has multiple sleep paralysis experiences with a terrifying presence and can never tell anybody about it walks around with a really big load to bear.
I take an anti-anxiety kind of a medication to be able to relax enough to let my body fall asleep. And it's a natural sleep. It's not like a comatose kind of a sleep. I still dream. I still wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or to get a drink of water. But it just kind of takes the edge off, I guess.
I think a pretty common experience is, I need this to stop. How do I get this to stop? How do I cope with this?
I can't think of anything good that came of it, other than I do believe that there's real evil out there.
ending it, most people, the intuitive response is to struggle to move, and as soon as you move anything, it's over. If that doesn't work, what people all over the world do, including modern North Americans who had not been told to do it, what they do is pray. And in almost all cases, people told me that as soon as it occurred to them to pray, it went away.
Usually when somebody has this, they'll say you should go to the monk, and the monk needs to look at your level of Eliase, which is your luck level, or whether you have high bad luck. This is what everybody will say. So the family will often take the person to the temple, or they'll go on their own, and the monk will ask the birth date, and he will, in some cases they have a wheel, and they'll calculate where you fall on the wheel. There's one of these, on one part of the wheel there's something called Gruach Gabot Gaw, meaning bad luck cuts off your head, and it means that your state of luck, as they call it, is horrible, that and it usually lasts for a year. Then they'll do something like a water anointing ceremony where they'll simply make holy water by chanting, sort of sending power into the water, candle dripping into the water, the sense of transferring sacred energies into the water, and then we'll sprinkle this on your body to increase your force. We'll tie something around your wrist, and we'll chant and call your soul into your body to strengthen you. It may tell you to recite the name of the Buddha as you go to sleep, so you'll be protected.
At nighttime, before they go to sleep, go into a meditative stage and surround yourself with light. Maybe also apply a code, a gauze of light, and put it around your body, or just imagine you're in a bubble of light and you are protected.
There are certainly several different methods people can use to calm the body. What we know is that breathing deeply through the nose and out through the mouth 3 times. 3 seems to be the magic number. Okay, 3 times seems to reset our internal clock.
Don't take naps in the morning, lying on your back, especially if you're REM deprived. But naps in the morning, naps seem to make it more likely than ordinary sleep. Sleeping in the morning, I'm talking about like 8, 9, 10 o'clock, seems to make it more likely.
In my opinion, these attacks can be stopped or thwarted by them, their faith, okay, seeking faith, surrounding themselves in whatever, okay, creates a safe space for them, sacred space, contacting and connecting with their angelic forces. Angels were given to us to use. We truly need, and I don't mean to sound preachy about angels, but truly, utilize your angels. They're there. Utilize them.
Don't sleep on your back. It's not a good idea to sleep on your back anyway, orthopedically. And somewhere around 70-75% of, in my data, all sleep paralysis attacks happen when you're lying on your back.
What I usually do also is I've learned to sleep on my side, on the right side or the left side, but I don't sleep on my back and I don't sleep on my stomach any longer.
If you've never talked to anybody about this, you should. You'll have more friends, a closeness with them is what I mean, more of a closeness with all these people that you didn't know was there, if you can just find the right person to talk to about your inner self and let them know. It could be your closest friend you don't even know.
So get enough sleep. If you wake up from sleep paralysis during the night, don't go right back to sleep, because if you do, it's very likely to happen immediately again. Get up, just walk around a bit, have a glass of water, then go back to sleep. That makes it less likely to recur.
If you find that you're experiencing something that's disturbing, it's incredibly important to look for help and to talk about it. And you won't get locked up and you won't get put on meds. And in fact, you may become leaders in this new evolution of human psyche, this transpersonal experience that many of us feel and experience but have not yet been able to put into words.
I can't believe I'm not alone.